word, like I said this morning, this is kind of a mini message. It's not going to be a long word this morning, simply because I was wrestling with the Lord about it, and He said keep it short. So that's how it goes. You can't say, Christ, I want you to be the lead, and then and then not listen to Him, right? So. But I'm excited about what God is doing in this season, and I'm excited. I really feel like the Lord even has been speaking to me. I really believe that the Lord's saying that that we're not necessarily, we're not having to strive forward to see what He's wanting to do. I think it's more about us surrendering to what He wants to do, rather than striving for it, trying to make something happen. I think God just wants us to rest in Him. I really feel like that's a key component of what God is wanting to do in our midst. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in trying to be busy for the sake of being busy. And I think the Lord's saying, hey, just rest, just surrender. Let me take you into this. And it's always about, I've been saying this for some of the people that do stuff around here, and we always have different technical problems and different things like that. And I always say, hey, we just take one step at a time. We're not trying to go from step 15 to 50, in 1 week, right? Like we'll go from step 15 to step 16, right? So don't worry about it. But I really actually had the challenge this week as just as the Lord was speaking to me, He kind of said that's the same way that I want to move in people's lives. You don't have to necessarily get them from step 15 to 55 in 1 week or one message or one thing. I'm wanting you to help them just take the next step that I have for them. I look back at my life, I look back at what God's done in my life, and it's been a bunch of little steps, a bunch of little surrenders here and there, and letting God do what He is doing. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that this morning. And the Lord gave me this analogy, and it happened to be about something in my past. It was actually a car that my parents had bought. And when I was somewhere in my teens at the time, but they bought a white Dodge Stratus. And they absolutely loved this car. Like, it drove better. Like, we had a whole bunch of different vehicles beforehand. I remember we had one of those big green station wagons with the wood on the side of it from like the 70s. I remember being small and driving around in the back of one of those. Now, that's like, are you trying to murder your children? But that was quite more common back when I was a kid, allowing that kind of stuff. We had all other kinds of vehicles. But this vehicle was a little bit better than some of the vehicles that my parents had previously driven, and it performed well, and they really liked it. But one of the problems, my dad was saying, maybe you shouldn't say it was a Dodge Stratus, but there's some Dodge fans out there, they might be upset, because the story kind of goes like they had a lot of trouble with this car. Even though they loved it, there was lots of things that kept on going wrong on this car, and they had to continue to do repairs. And because they loved this car, and they seen themselves driving in this vehicle. Every time it broke down and they could drive, like, okay, well, let's just repair it, and once we get it. But then eventually what ended up happening was a large repair needed to happen, and the transmission went on the vehicle. And so my parents were forced with this dilemma of, okay, I can rebuild this transmission. It's going to be nearly $5,000, and it's actually now at the point where it's kind of, the repair cost is a little bit more than maybe the vehicle is even worth now. But they're like, oh man, we love this car. We love driving this car. It performs well. And we've already done all this other work to the car. So, if we do this repair, now we're going to have we'll be able to get a good amount of years of use out of this vehicle. Because, what else could go wrong? Right? and eventually, so they got the repair. They decided to take the plunge, and they got the transmission fixed. But the problem was that the car just never operated the same after. For some reason, it just ran really rough, especially in the heat. And my family we're from Kamloops, and it gets hot weather. This area gets hot weather, and so it's warm more than it's not. But I remember my dad, the first few years, after the car didn't perform well, I remember him taking the insurance off for the summer and putting the insurance back on in the winter, and just trying to like get as much use out of this car. Trying to like, I put so much money into this, I'm going to get some use out of it. And you know, I even remember. But I don't think my mom wanted to drive the car anymore. It was just like, you know, I don't know if this thing's going to stop working or what. And I just remember, yeah, for the first few winters. But then, you know, after a while, my dad stopped doing that, and it was sitting in his driveway. And you know, for the first while, I remember even after he wasn't driving, he would still go out and he would start the car just to make sure that the engine would start and, you know, run it and all of that kind of stuff. But eventually he stopped even doing that. And now I can say, one of the first times I brought Roxanne to Kamloops, I was a little bit embarrassed. Because right in their driveway is this Dodge Stratus, and it's sitting there, and it's underneath this tree that like grows these orange berries all over it, and these berries drop all over it. The back, it's a white vehicle, and the back half of it is like almost blackening from like all the stuff that the tree is dropping on it, and the one side mirror is broken off, and it was duct tape back on at one point, but now the duct tape is no longer sticking, so the duct tape is sticking up. All the tires no longer have any air in them, so they're flat, right? You know what I mean? And it's just, it's an eyesore. And I was like thinking about how my parents so loved this vehicle that they sunk all this money into it over and over and over again. And it just, because it just didn't end up working out, you know, they tried to do what they could, but they kind of lost the vision, the imagination they had of themselves driving that vehicle. They've gotten better vehicles now. Yet they still haven't quite let go of this vehicle. And I really feel like, you know, in Proverbs 13:12 it says, and Pastor Mark would always say this one, it was, hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desires come, it is a tree of life. And I really wanted to say that I really felt like what the Lord was speaking through this little analogy about this Dodge Stratus was, I really truly believe that we have Dodge Stratuses in our life. Things that didn't quite work out the way we wanted them to work out, or the way we planned for them to work out. And now they've been sitting in our lives, and really they're just sitting there rotting. They're just sitting there decaying. And I really felt like it was interesting because the Lord gave me this analogy, and He reminded me of something that I recently told one of my friends as I was helping him. We went for a walk, and he serves in another church, and he was just telling me he's doing like the tech for them, and he's just saying, man, I don't know what it is, but like it's so grinding. Like it just so drains me now doing all this, and I have this and I have that. And I just remember asking him and saying to him, I said, well, I mean, that's interesting because when you started doing that, you were so passionate about it. You were so passionate about that when you started doing that. And I said to him, you know, you really need to seek the Lord whether or not He wants you to be doing that, or whether it's time to move on from that. Because God's got something for you to be passionate about. I said, God's either going to give you a passion for it again, or you've done the season that you were supposed to, and you need to let it go. And I kind of was thinking about this Dodge Stratus, which still is sitting in my parents' driveway. If you're listening, Dad, I'm sorry. I told him I was using this analogy. I talked to him this week about it. But it's still sitting in that driveway. And you know what? I honestly think it's like, hey, it's time to call somebody up like Steve Webb and just get the tow truck in and get that car out of there, right? Because, you know, you don't want to be walking by every day by the things that have, you know, maybe didn't work out, and you're just reminded constantly about how something didn't work out. It's like it's time to move on and grab a hold of something fresh. Or it's time to allow God to give you a vision for something that didn't quite work out in His time. You tried it, and He's asking you to be passionate about it. And I really wanted to just encourage us this morning that I believe God wants to do something in us today. There's things that God's going to be asking us to get the tow truck to haul it off. And there's things that God's going to say, no, I want you to reimagine yourself driving that vehicle again. I'm going to put a spark there again. You're going to pick up that dream. You're going to pick up that thing again. Or even, it's interesting, but I even feel like this might be to do with dreams, it might be to do with callings, it might be to do with business, it might even be to do with people. But I really want the Lord to be able to reveal that to you. In a moment, I'm going to ask Nadine and Donna to come back up, and we're going to sing a song again. And I really believe that when we sing that song, I really believe that it's a moment to actually reflect and seek the Lord about what are those Dodge Stratuses in your life? What are those things, in your life that it's time to move on from, or it's time to get repassioned for again? Because I believe this is a season. It's not a striving season. It's not something to strive after. It's something just to surrender and say, Lord, I want what you want, and I'm willing to let some things go. It's really interesting. Last night I didn't sleep very well, and I had some different situations from my past rotating in my mind and in my heart, and some things that didn't work out and all that kind of stuff. And then even this morning, we're driving in, and I'm still thinking of all stuff, and I'm thinking, man, why am I thinking about all this stuff, that of the past? I'm thinking, why is my head stuck there? And I'm like, I want to be thinking about this morning and what you want to do, Lord, and all that kind of stuff. And the Lord said, well, you're thinking about that because those are two situations that are Dodge Stratuses in your life. And I was like, oh, God, how did I not, see that? How did I not think that? So even for myself, I feel like the Lord is revealing to me things that it's just time to let go. And for me, both of those things are just things that need to be, they're done with, but sometimes there are emotions that are attached to things, sometimes, and it's just time to give them into the Lord's hands, to lay them down at God's feet and just say, you know what, God, I'm leaving those. I'm not even making any more judgments about those. I'm not going to spend my time even thinking about those situations any longer. I'm moving forward. And I really believe that this is a moment and a morning that God wants to help us be able to move forward. After this song, Renee is going to come up, and we're going to do a bit of an altar call and stuff like that. And really what we're just trying to do when we want to pray with you is we just want to stand with you. As a body, we're a family. And we want to stand with you in prayer, and we want to be able to soar. So it might be, if you feel the need for prayer to be re-impassioned for something, we want to stand with you, and we want to be able to pray with you about that. If you feel the need to have a spiritual tow truck show up and remove some things that you have been having a hard time, getting rid of, well, we want to support you, and we want to stand with you in that. So I really want to encourage you, allow the Lord in the song. So I'm going to call up Nadine. I did keep it pretty short. That's pretty good. I think that's one of my best ones ever. Pat myself on the back of it. I just really want to encourage us. Let's take a moment here as we sing this next song, and let's let the Lord just speak to us. Let Him reflect to us what might be a Dodge Stratus in our lives, and ask Him, Lord, what do I do with this? And let Him lead you with that.